Hey everybody, we're going to be starting something new here on the DK Motorsports Channel. We're going to start an iRacing help / tutorial and discussion channel involving all of iRacing's racing series. It will primarily be focused on NASCAR's fixed series and dirt oval, but with enough contribution we'll be looking at road as well. Other drivers and I will be discussing racing methods and tactics associated with the tracks of that week. It will also be used as a discussion platform to discuss the happenings at iRacing and all other motorsports across the world. Thank you for stopping by and checking it out. Whenever I show up to a track for the first time that week on Monday night, one of the first things I do is click on this tab in the bottom left, Info, and you go look at weather. You can see that it is 78 degrees Fahrenheit outside with a track temperature of 82. The way Darlington is set up is you're racing in the late afternoon and it goes into the night as it goes. You will never make it to nighttime, but the track will cool off as the race goes on. Relative humidity is 55%. I have yet to notice a difference with different humidities. It's usually pretty stable, around 50 to 60% humidity for the fixed setup races. And before I even get on track, I go to garage, go down to chassis, and you look at the steering ratio. They're starting you off default at 12 to 1. 12 to 1 is okay, but I usually go up to 14 or 16. What steering ratio does, if you look at the bottom, degrees of steering wheel rotation to give 1 degree of front wheel steer angle. Higher ratio equals slower response, less twitchy, harder to catch slides with counter steering. With steering ratio, the higher you go up, the more you're going to turn the wheel, but also the more control you have over your vehicle. Another thing I always change before I head out on track is the front brake bias. Its default is 62.5. The way iRacing sets up their fixed cars and trucks, it always seems like the brake bias is way too high. If you look at the bottom, the percent of braking force acting at the front wheels, more front bias equals car more stable under braking, but longer braking distances needed. Too little front bias equals car wants to spin under braking. Usually before I go out on track, I'll drop this down to about 5 less than what the default is. What that means is with brake bias, the higher the percent is shifting the braking power to the front, whereas a lower percent is moving more of that braking to the rear. When you have more brake in the rear, if your truck or car is too tight, having a lower brake bias will help it rotate through the corners better. So I usually go down 5. The other thing about brake bias is it's one of the in-car adjustments that you can make while you're actually out on the track. So we're starting with 57% brake bias. When you are in the car, if you hit F8 on your keyboard, that brings up your in-car adjustments. If you don't want to reach for the keyboard, you can always take your mouse and go down and click the arrows left and right to get to in-car adjustments. While you are driving, you can adjust it down 3%, which would get us down to 54% brake bias, or you can go up positive 3%, which would give us 60 brake bias. So if you're ever on a long run and you feel like you're starting to get tight again, you can always go down 3% more on the brake bias. If you're ever on a long run and you're getting too loose, you can always go back up 3% brake bias and move some of that braking back to the front. Something to note too, when you set your brake bias, your offset, and your ratio, you can change the brake bias while driving, but you have it locked in for the race. So even if you go to the pits and you hit escape, if you are in the middle of a race and you go to garage, these will be grayed out. You cannot change these while you are in a race. So whatever you find to your liking in practice, have that set the way you want it and have your brake bias within a range that you want to fluctuate between while you're racing on the track. Another thing you can change is steering offset. Steering offset is the degrees of steering wheel offset achieved with a combination of installing the steering wheel into the quick release mechanism off center and adjusting the front tie rods. If you're ever at a track and while you're driving down the straightaways, if your steering wheel is slightly to the right or slightly to the left, if you go down on the offset, it'll start slowly moving it back towards center. If you're to the left a little bit, you go up on the offset and it'll start moving that wheel to the right. I usually don't change my offset because I don't really think it affects the way I drive. So we're going through 3 and 4, getting ready to run our first lap. At the beginning of a run with these trucks, you can definitely go full speed through turns 1 and 2. So what you want to do is hit your left side tires on that white line, let it drift up about next to that Darlington logo, and then cut it down low coming out of the corner, full throttle the whole time. To be fast, you're going to want to brake kind of late, let it drift up next to that Darlington logo again, and you're going to get tight in the center. You got to look at Darlington corners as two corners in one. You can stay full speed in 1 and 2 for probably the first 5 laps of a run, but at the same time, if you're going to be running that hard, you're going to be burning your tires a lot faster. The way to save tires here at Darlington is to get off the gas early and on the brake early. You will never hit the brakes going through 1 and 2. The most you're going to do is let off. So here we go on lap 3. Drift way up the track. Start to turn it back down. Get a little bit of draft off this guy.
Got one inside. All clear, all clear.
Your speed out of turn 4 is what's going to help you be fast through turns 1 and 2. And at a track like Darlington, you really don't want to make your passes in the middle of the corner. You want to get a run on them down the straightaway, and hopefully they back out of it and just let you go by.
Got one inside.
Just let them have it.
Clear low, clear low.
You can always try an over-under, but at a track like Darlington, because the racing surface is so skinny, it's not recommended. You're just going to frustrate the guy around you, and it's really not worth it in the long run. If somebody wants to be faster than you, just go ahead and let them go by. And you'll notice in these trucks, there is a lot of draft. Another thing to note, if you're not saving tires, or if the run's been going for a long time, we tend to have a lot of green flag runs here at Darlington. Your truck will get tight about right here in 3 and 4. You get used to drifting up the track, and sometimes it's real easy to accidentally drift up too far and just kiss it off the wall. So now, if you want to save tires, going in here, going in turn 3, just get off the gas and let it really roll through the corner. And now, I say you can go through turns 1 and 2, pedal to the metal, but you don't necessarily have to if you want to save tires. If you let off right here and get back on it, it shifts the weight from being on the right front to the right rear. That way you don't kill the right front. If you let off early for the entry, it'll help your exit coming out of the corner as well.
Clear low, clear low.